and welcome to the first episode of the Rags to Races podcast. I'm your host, I'm Jake, and I'm going to be here to help you get involved in motorsport in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't matter what your budget is. A little bit about myself. I'm 36 years old. Like I said, my name is Jake. I live in the Chicago area, the suburbs outside of Schaumburg, if you're familiar with the area. And I've really been into, the car culture, motorsports, especially road racing, most of my life, if not all my life. Problem is, no one else in my family has any desire like I do when it comes to cars. Yeah, we went to the dirt track every now and then when I was a kid. We'd go to car shows here and there. But I was the one that was really infatuated with all that stuff and just so passionate about it. I didn't really have anyone growing up to help me get involved or be around it all the time. It was a once-in-a-while thing. It was a special treat for me. Well, I appreciated it. I always wanted more, and even as I get older here and pushing 40, I still want more. I've always kind of had to do this on my own. I've never really had anyone else that has the drive I do. Even a lot of my close friends. Some of them are really into cars like me, and have joined me on a few things here and there, but for the most part, it's really been sort of a solo mission for myself, and I've always wanted any kind of involvement, anything else I can do to get more involved. I've got to do it. It's in my blood, it's in my brain. I can't escape it. It's kind of where I got the idea for this podcast. I only started listening to podcasts recently when I got my iPhone. I've been a diehard Android user for a long time, and I'd heard about all these different podcasts and stuff, but up until recently, you really couldn't get a whole lot on Android without downloading extra apps or anything. Once I got my iPhone, I really just kind of dove into the world. I started out listening to the Serial podcast and whatnot, and once I started listening to that, I'm like, well, there's got to be some car ones out there, or something for racing, or something involving, motorsports in general. I looked around, and I've actually found several really good car culture podcasts, and started listening to them, and then I started listening to stuff like Adam Carolla's CarCast, and while they were great, and CarCast talks about racing somewhat, but it's stuff I'm never probably going to be able to attain, running Paul Newman car up the hill climb in England, or the historics at Monterey. It's never going to happen for me. I was looking for more something like the average person, whoever they are, how they can get involved in different forms of motorsport and really become involved and follow their passions. And the more I looked at it, the more I started to think that maybe you really do need to be rich. I've learned over the years that's not always the case, but as you listen to some of these podcasts, you really start to think, well, how much money do these guys have to spend on this stuff? And, it's really not about the money. If you've really got the passion, there are things you can do. And I'm going to share my experiences, my stories. I'm going to be getting some interviews with some other people to share their stories, their experience, and let you know how it is you can get involved as well. Basically, my main goal for this podcast is to get those of you out there listening involved in one way, shape, or form, to follow your passions, no matter what your budget is. Realistically speaking, obviously, I'm not saying you're going to go out there and race an IndyCar or get into NASCAR. But if you find a little heap and do some circle track racing, or you do some amateur racing or autocrossing, and I'll kind of go over that stuff as we go, explaining what it is, how to get involved in future episodes. But that's my plan. If I can get one email from one person saying, thank you, you helped me follow something I've always wanted to do but didn't know I could. That's going to mean the world to me. Going back to myself and growing up, I fell in love with cars in general at a very young age and had no idea where to start. I know my dad at one point in time had said that he had looked into possibly getting a go-kart for me but couldn't afford it. And I thought that, from there on, I've always thought, you've got to be super rich to get involved in any way, shape, or form. And while, yes, money does help, don't get me wrong there, you don't need it. You don't really need a lot of money. If it's just a passion and the drive and what you want to do, it's what you want to do, then by all means get out there and do it. That's my mission, my message, to share with you out there on the internet. Even my high school that I went to a very small town in rural Illinois that didn't even have an auto shop program. So even my chance to get my hands on working on a car or building a car, all that, there was nowhere for me to do it, nowhere for me to learn. And it was really frustrating growing up, especially, in my teenage years when I got my first car and when I, got my second car, crashed it, got my third car. I really just wanted some outlet, some way of learning how to do this stuff. And I didn't really have that. I did have a good friend who taught me how to build car stereo systems. And that helped. That was definitely a lot of fun and something I worked on quite a bit and actually got fairly proficient at it over the years. Not something I really do anymore, seeing how car stereos add a lot of weight to a car, and I'm more concerned with removing weight and unneeded objects. So my current project car right now has absolutely no stereo or speakers in it whatsoever, and it's going to stay that way. But back to my what I was originally saying. I digress. The big thing is I didn't have any way of even learn how to turn wrenches on cars. So I got a fairly late start to that. I didn't really start working on cars in general until I was about 18 or 19 years old. I joined the Army right out of high school at 18 and became a diesel mechanic in the Army. For those of you soldiers listening, I was a 63 Bravo light wheel vehicle mechanic. What that means is I worked on everything from old Chevy diesels to Hummers to 5-ton trucks, basically small semis, and turn wrenches on everything. And I became fairly proficient at that over my years in the Army. And even got to live in Germany for a couple of years, which for any gearhead, it's kind of Mecca or Nirvana, however you want to look at it. I did drive the Autobahn quite extensively while I lived there. My current record is 155 miles an hour. Hopefully we'll be able to break that one of these days if I can ever get back over there. Unfortunately, I just had your average lower enlisted soldier hoopty while I was living there, so I never felt really safe enough to take it out on the Nürburgring and drive the green hell. That's something else. It's on my bucket list. I will hope to remedy one of these days. But while I was in the Army and living in Germany, I actually came home on leave over the summer after a small deployment to Kosovo. And I happened to run into one of my old high school friends, and she always knew I was a big car guy and into cars, and we got to talking one night. And she brought up that her and her husband do this thing I'd never heard of before called autocross. And instantly what jumped into my mind was motocross with cars. So I'm thinking dirt track with jumps and you're pounding into each other. And I couldn't have been any further from reality there for those of you who do understand the sport. And a quick little education here for those of you who don't know what autocross is. What it is you go to a big parking lot or airstrip and set up a street cone road course, if you will. So it's full of a lot of tight corners with cone gates you go through, sometimes slaloms, and you're basically racing yourself. You're racing the clock. They gap the cars out so there's no wheel-to-wheel action. And it all really comes down to driver ability and getting through the course as clean as possible and as fast as possible. And I had just bought myself an 86 Camaro with a little 305 carbureted. It wasn't anything pretty, but it did the job. It was an automatic. And I took it out there and gave it a try for the first time. And that first pass that I did was absolutely abysmal. It was slow. I was more sideways than facing the right direction. But I got done. I had such an adrenaline rush. My hands were shaking, and they didn't stop shaking for a good 5 minutes afterwards. And I'll tell you what, that bug bit me, and it bit hard, and it's never gone away. I've always kind of wanted to keep that going and continue to do that. So over the years, I did continue to autocross after I got out of the Army. I tried to do at least 1 or 2 a year. Never really done a full season competitively. However, I did get enough experience to actually instruct at an autocross event one time, and that was an absolute blast. I got to teach one of my good friends, actually. And it's been something that I've always, kind of fall back on whenever I want to get to do some performance driving and don't have a huge budget. I know I can always go to an autocross, get it out of my system. And we'll be going over autocross a lot more in a future episode. But that was sort of where the bug bit and took hold. And after I got out of the Army, I also went to a tech school and became an automotive technician. While I loved the job and loved turning wrenches all day, I struggled with fixing the Soccer Mom minivan every day and the old beater pickup truck, work truck. It got very boring. I wanted to work on more exciting stuff. It just stuck with me. I couldn't get that out of my head. So I was a technician for over a year. I can't remember exactly how long off the top of my head, but I heard about another tech school, this time down in Houston, Texas, where they teach you how to design and build engines for the racing industry of any kind, whether it be boats, cars, drag racing, road racing, you name it. Basically, it's an engine's an engine, and they're going to teach you how to build it for racing. So I packed up my bags, all my belongings, and I moved down to Houston. I lived down there for 2 years and did the course. The main thing I wanted to get out of the course there were a lot of gaps from my Army training to tech school that didn't explain about how everything worked with building engines, designing engines, and what it took to really get them together. Now, I understand the basics of the operation and how that worked, but if there were issues or anything, like if the first tech school I went to, it got to the point where I asked, I'm doing an engine building class, and you tell me that there's an issue with the block, or it needs to be honed or bored, or there's an issue with the cylinder head. I ask, well, what did they do to fix it? Well, you just send it to the engine shop, and they'll fix it for you, and then they'll send it back to you, and that's it. But I still had those questions. How? Why? What are they doing? How are they fixing it? What are they doing to make it better? Why does it do this? What's it take? And the tech school down in Houston that I went to answered all those questions and then some. And while I was down there, because it was racing centered, I had the opportunity to work on the drag racing cars that they had at the school a little bit. And while there, they basically encourage any involvement in motorsports that you can do. It wasn't really big into drag racing anymore at that time. I still like it. I still go to the races and watch, but it wasn't my thing then. It still really isn't my thing now. But what I did do while I was there was I met up with another student who was big into dirt track and sprint cars, something I'd never been around before. I'd heard stories about basically just giant go-karts on steroids with no transmission, and it didn't make any sense to me. So in my thirst for knowledge, I went to a couple races with him, actually met a few drivers, and got the opportunity to actually work on some of those sprint cars, to the point where I was actually working on a national level sprint car, and got to take a trip. They just called it a field trip at school, and I was able to take the time off and make it up at the end. But I got to take a trip to Knoxville, Iowa, which is basically the sprint car capital of the world, and run a full race weekend as a crew member on 2 different cars, a father and son team, and really got to see what it was like behind the scenes and working at a race, during a race, with a team. And it was another one of those instances I fell in love and wanted to continue doing it. I got done with school down in Houston. I moved around a little bit. I eventually did make my way back to Illinois. And while I was in Illinois, I came back, actually went back to my old shop and was a service writer for a little bit. Bounced around from job to job, and I'm at my job now where I'm working with computers now at this point. But racing bugs still hit me, and through work I actually met a gentleman who races regionally and nationally with the Sports Car Club of America. He runs the STL class, which is a big up-and-coming and growing class. Basically, it takes your stock car with a small engine and allows you a little bit more freedom than, let's say, Spec Miata does to build the car and design the car and upgrade it to your liking. He actually runs I believe it's an 88 Mazda RX-7. And I've been crewing with him for over a year now, and it's been an absolute blast. It's a good chance to get out and go to some race weekends and be behind the scenes. When I'm there, I'm actually usually the crew chief, as I'm the one who's at the pit lane with the headphones on and talking to him and giving him lap times and gaps between him and the car in front of him, car in behind him, what's going on, if I notice anything going on, lap times, etc., etc. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm also, like I said, I'm building a car. I am a glutton for punishment, apparently, and decided to build my own car. I'm actually planning on going endurance racing with it. I'm going to go for a low-budget racing series. And I say I'm a glutton for punishment when it comes to building my own car, because it comes with all the struggles and the pain, and it does cost a good chunk of money to build a car. My current car, the car itself only cost me $900, but when all's said and done, when I have all the safety gear and equipment put in it, and it's actually ready to race 100%, I'm going to have several $1,000s into my $900 car. But that's how it goes. Sometimes you can find some deals on some partially built cars or used race cars. If you've got the money, that is definitely a way to go. But I really love the idea of building something myself with my own two hands and seeing it come to fruition. That might not be for everybody, but it's definitely for me, and I will keep you abreast of what's going on with the car and where I stand with it. And once I get it on track, I'll let you know where I'll be and how I do. Some of the other stuff I do racing-wise is I currently am also sim racing with the program called iRacing. I know I get a lot of slack from some of the SCCA guys because I actually do consider it a real form of motorsport, and it's quote-unquote fake. Well, when you've got a very limited budget and you can't afford to go racing every weekend like some of these guys can, it really is a good outlet, and it's definitely good training and seat time to learn a track, or just to get a feel of what it's like wheel-to-wheel racing. See if it's even something that you might be interested in. It might not be your cup of tea, but they do cover circle track and road racing, and they are adding dirt tracks as well to it. So if you want to get your hand on a sprint car and see how it feels to go sideways on the dirt with one speed, you can definitely do it there. And it also teaches you a lot about setup of the car, and you can sit there and play with setups all day if you'd like and see how it affects the handling of the car, the braking of the car, and really learn from a driver and a technician standpoint how to convey information to your crew if changes need to be made. But enough about me and me rattling on about myself here for several minutes. I want to kind of give you an idea of what you can expect from this podcast. I'm going to do my best to turn in weekly episodes. I can't always guarantee it's going to happen. I am busy with work and working on my own race car, helping with other race cars. And my wife is also a student working on her master's, so I'm doing a lot of the stuff around the house to take care of while she has time to study. But I will be doing my best for weekly episodes. You are going to be hearing interviews from other people who have been involved in motorsports in one way, shape, or form. Different areas, expertise for each guest that we have on. I'm also going to be trying some of these things out myself, see how I like it, and reporting back on what my experience and my feelings were on the situation and what the experience of the whole day was. I'm also going to be bringing in other novices like myself, or people who aren't really involved, and having them come out with me and experience some of this stuff, try it for themselves. I'm going to also have a co-host on future episodes who is not as big a gearhead as me, but he definitely is interested. So I'll have more of a layman's approach to things, and if I do get too technical or complicated, he'll be there to stop me and help me explain things best I can so everybody understands and can learn. I'm going to try and cover multiple different types of racing. Mainly I'm going to be specializing in road racing. That's my true passion. But I will be looking at some circle track, dirt track stuff, sim racing like I talked before. I may even try and get involved with rally and snow racing, stuff like that. So each week we'll try and cover one aspect of amateur racing and see where it goes from there. If I have any inputs from anybody, I'll do my best to try and cover anything special. If I get enough feedback that people want to hear it, I'll do what I can. I also plan on talking to other podcasts, sharing their experiences. I know there are several of the ones I listen to. The guys are either building their own cars or have built cars, have done different forms of racing in the road course racing world at least. And I'll probably see about getting some other people who are involved in drag racing, et cetera, just to get them to share their stories, their experience, what it's like in an average day for them. And I'll take all kinds of, any emails or messages via social media and answer as many of your questions, either responding on the social media or email or here on the podcast as well. If it's a really good question and I think it could help a lot of people, I will definitely cover them on the air. My big thing is I want to give you, the listener, every opportunity in the world you can to follow your dreams in motorsports and get involved and be in the middle of it all, to really enjoy it and experience it for what it's worth. I'm going to do everything I can to help you achieve your goals, because the more people we get involved in motorsport, the better it is for everybody. I'm a strong believer in the saying that a rising tide lifts all ships. What I mean by that is, the more people we get involved in motorsports in general, it doesn't have to be road racing just like me or any form of motorsports at all. The more people we get out there, the better it is for everybody, because as we get more participants, the cost to sign up for an event is going to go down. Performance parts, as there's more of a market, that'll drive the prices down, and it's going to help everybody in the long run. And the more information we share with each other as racers, it will help us all, become faster and more dedicated and better behind the wheel. That's how I feel, and that I hope you share that with me, and I'm here to share it with you. So a couple things to think about here before you do get started. You should really educate yourself as much as possible. I'm one of those people that's always reading, always learning. Use as many books that you can find, either at your local library or through online bookstores or even brick and mortar bookstores. Anywhere you can find books to learn about either your specialized form of racing in general, cars, car setups, et cetera. That's definitely something I would strongly suggest. I've been reading books about cars since I was probably 14 years old, just learning as much as I can, even though wasn't able to get my hands on them until I was much older. The more you read, the better you get in the long run, and it will help you. And I'm going to share a list on my Facebook page to show you some of the books that I read and have read, and I would suggest to anybody who wants to get started. You can find them in Amazon, Google, even your library. If you really don't have the cash, you can always check your library and see. You might be able to get a hold of some of these books for free. And if you do choose to get behind the wheel like me, make sure safety is a priority. The last thing you want to do is skimp on your safety equipment. I myself take whatever the bare minimum is and try and go above and beyond that for my own safety, and because my car is going to be an endurance car. I'm not going to be the only person behind the wheel, and I don't want to put their safety at risk either. The fact of the matter is, when we get behind the wheel every time, there's a real good chance something bad could happen, and you never want to put your life on the line for something stupid as getting behind the wheel of a race car on a track. Make sure you're as safe as possible. Be flexible. That's a really good bit of advice I can give you. If you're looking for a specific type of racing, look at the rule book. Look what it says. Look what what cars are available. Don't get your mindset that you want XYZ car for this, because the fact of the matter is you might not be able to find it in your budget. If you're flexible with your budget and you're flexible with what you want, let's say you want to go circle track racing on the asphalt tracks like they have around here in central Illinois, you can do front wheel drive car. You would see what is competitive, but then also see what else is available, because you might not be able to just afford that top of the line car just yet. You just find a good front engine front wheel drive car and go from there. I was lucky enough, the car I wanted was a Miata, and I was able to find one for under $1,000. It did take a long time for me to find that car for that price. Yes, I saw some for the same price or cheaper, but they weren't in as good condition, and I had to be very patient about that. You really need to watch your budget, put yourself a budget together, figure out how much you have to spend, and set that money aside and use it for the race car as much as you can. But understand, that is a secondary thing to life. Don't take away from your food, shelter, etc., etc. And be realistic about your goals. There really is many, many different ways you can get behind the wheel, get that rush. I'm going to go over as many as I can with you in the coming episodes. But don't break the bank just to get halfway to what your dream is. Be realistic in that and set a goal and stick to it, and you'll get there. Might not take tomorrow. It might not be done tomorrow. Might not be done next week. I've been working on my car for a year now, and I'm almost ready to start putting it back together. Now that I've got it stripped down, I still need to save up the money for the important safety stuff, because like I said before, I'm not skimping on the safety stuff. I'm going to make sure it's top of the line, good quality stuff that I'm putting into this car to keep myself safe. And, when building a car too, along with that, don't rush. Rushing to put it together to get into a race isn't going to help you, especially if the car isn't reliable enough to finish a race. There's no point in getting involved in a race if you can't even finish it because your car isn't ready. It's better to take your time, do it right, use the right parts. That way it ensures your safety and that the car is going to last for you. That about does it, I guess, for the first episode. Just remember, there are no strangers in motorsport. There's only friends you haven't met yet. And I can't tell you how many times I've found that saying to be true. Every time I go to a race, every time I go somewhere, I always end up meeting one or two new people and getting to hear some of their stories, share some of mine. I'll be hopefully having some of them on here as well to share with you, the listener. You can find me on Facebook or facebook.com/rags2races. Twitter and Instagram are at rags2races. And my email is rags2races@gmail.com. Also watch for me as I'm out and about at different events. I will be posting live on Facebook or possibly Periscope as well. If I'm working on my car, I may jump on there as well. And once again, welcome. Good luck. Best wishes to you. Keep the shiny side up, and I will talk to you again soon. Thank you.